when drones dominate the battlefield. In mid-March 2024, several highly respected former U.S. military generals wrote articles comparing the potential power of unmanned aircraft with the development of the ancient phalanx formation, which allowed Alexander the Great to conquer vast kingdoms. They went even further by suggesting that unmanned aircraft could render traditional air forces obsolete. It is not difficult to understand why they hold this view. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine has witnessed the transformation of unmanned aircraft from a specialized counter-terrorism tool controlled by the U.S. and its allies to an indispensable element on the modern battlefield. Russian unmanned aircraft have continuously attacked major cities and energy infrastructure throughout Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ukrainian unmanned aircraft have turned a large portion of the Black Sea into a no-go zone for the Russian Navy, despite Ukraine having little significant naval forces. Recently, they have even penetrated deep into Russian territory to target military bases. On the front lines, unmanned aircraft are used as eyes in the sky for artillery, greatly enhancing the accuracy and effectiveness of these weapons, potentially leading to strategic stalemates where both sides are unable to deploy surprise elements. In the Middle East, U.S. forces have witnessed their air superiority gradually eroded by various non-state armed groups, while Hamas has been able to use inexpensive unmanned aircraft to inflict a series of casualties and overwhelm Israel's advanced air defense systems, including an attack on October 7, 2023. It is not surprising that the Pentagon is trying to draw lessons from these battlefields, especially as they see the potential for future conflicts with China. But while technological advancements, from bows and arrows to atomic bombs, have changed the nature of warfare, what sets the era of unmanned warfare apart from previous military innovations is how it will unfold. With unmanned aircraft, the advantage no longer lies with the military possessing the most advanced or powerful weapons, but with the military that has a large quantity of these new weapons and the ability to mass produce them, as well as replace them quickly. The Shahed unmanned aircraft, produced by Iran and used by Russia in Ukraine, cost only about $20,000 each, equivalent to 1/4 of the cost of a stealth F-35 missile. Furthermore, Ukrainian forces have even modified commercial racing drones worth only $400 to attack Russian troops. These unmanned aircraft may not have the precision or power of manned aircraft or advanced military drones like the U.S. MQ-9 Reaper, which costs around $32 million, but they do not need to. If one is lost, it doesn't matter. The result is that unmanned aircraft can become a force equalizer for financially struggling parties, whether it is the Houthi rebels disrupting global trade or Ukrainian defense forces lacking artillery ammunition. All of this is bad news for the U.S. military, which has always relied on technological superiority. In response, the Pentagon is launching a plan called Replicator to produce thousands of inexpensive unmanned aircraft that can replace all manned aircraft. This plan is aimed at preparing for a future superpower confrontation with China. Supporters see this not only as a new weapon, but also as a fundamental shift in how the U.S. military equips itself for future conflicts. However, even the most enthusiastic supporters acknowledge that this requires a fundamental change in thinking for one of the most stubborn bureaucracies in the U.S. government, a complex system that is already rapidly evolving. The rise of the replicator. In August 2023, U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks announced the launch of the Replicator project with the goal of providing autonomous systems that can be deployed in large numbers across various fields within 18 to 24 months. Hicks clearly targeted these weapons to overcome China's advantage in scale, the world's largest military force. She said, "The Replicator tool is designed to help us overcome China's biggest advantage, which is its large numbers. More ships, more missiles, more people." Although the details are unclear, these unmanned aircraft can form coordinated teams to counter China's scale and proximity advantage on the battlefield in the future. Aditi Kumar, Deputy Director of the Defense Innovation Unit at the Pentagon's Silicon Valley headquarters, said the purpose of the replicator is to prevent conflict with China, and if forced to fight, we need the ability to do so. Nearly 7 months have passed since Hicks's deadline, but the public still does not know what these systems will be like or who will manufacture them. According to the U.S. Department of Defense, about $500 million will be allocated to the replicator in the 2024 fiscal budget and another $500 million in the draft 2025 fiscal budget just released. This figure is relatively modest compared to the Pentagon's $850 billion budget request. The name replicator implies the reality that the U.S. Department of Defense hopes to replicate the entire production process. Essentially, every 90 days, the combat environment completely changes. Kumar said, quoting advisors in Ukraine, "Whatever capabilities they are developing, countermeasures have also been developed for those capabilities, so they have to constantly adapt to the battlefield." AI control. The deployment of large-scale unmanned aircraft can also promote the application of artificial intelligence in the military. Paul Shara, a former U.S. Department of Defense official now working at the new U.S. Security Center, CNAS, said the only way to operate thousands of unmanned aircraft is to have a level of autonomy for them. Because if you need thousands of control systems, you will need thousands of pilots, and that is a very large labor cost. Both sides in the conflict in Ukraine claim to be using AI to enhance the performance of unmanned aircraft. Until now, the use has probably been limited, but the war has also spurred the development of those capabilities. Ukraine's Minister of Digital Transformation, Mikhailo Fedorov, described fully autonomous unmanned aircraft as the inevitable next step in military innovation. Paul Shara, one of the scholars concerned about autonomous weapons, warns that they could inadvertently cause an international crisis by carrying out dangerous actions. Another concern is the speed of conflict in the future and the innovation of AI that could put pressure on removing humans from the decision-making process. He said, AI weapons are harder to test than civilian applications because it is difficult to simulate real combat conditions. You won't know how they will perform until the war breaks out. Anyway, the era of AI aircraft may come faster than we think. The U.S. Air Force is also pursuing its own program to develop cooperative autonomous combat aircraft or unmanned aircraft flying with manned aircraft. Pentagon officials describe this program as a supplement to the replicator. Made in the USA, manufacturing thousands of unmanned aircraft within Hick's timeframe may seem ambitious, but it is just the beginning. An anonymous senior Pentagon official said the replicator will deliver thousands of autonomous systems by 2025, and that is the measure of success or failure. But more importantly, it is a cultural change within the department that enables us to use authority in a more innovative way to accelerate equipping the warriors. The replicator targets the procurement and internal development process of the Pentagon, a process that has nearly quadrupled the average time to develop weapon systems, from research to deployment, compared to other countries since the 1970s. Meanwhile, their potential adversaries are accelerating. In 2018, Deputy Secretary of Defense for Research Michael Griffin estimated that it took the U.S. about 16 years to come up with new operational concepts, compared to less than 7 years for China. William Greenwalt, former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Industrial Policy, now working at the American Enterprise Institute, believes the reason is a culture of system analysis obsession, focusing on testing and comprehensive analysis of new systems. He said, "It's the best working program the Pentagon has ever developed, and as long as you don't have a peer competitor, you can sustain that program." But that is no longer true due to China's increasing capabilities and their strong investment in unmanned aircraft and autonomous systems. A senior Pentagon official admitted that the entire system must find ways to shorten the process from idea to operation of new systems. This means building a risk-accepting culture that can be controlled, not irresponsible risks. Greenwald predicts that the biggest technical challenge for Replicator will not be aerodynamics, range, or software, but production. Furthermore, the reality is that the U.S. commercial unmanned aircraft field has fallen behind China, where companies like DJI dominate with advanced technology. Ukraine has been praised for converting DJI's existing systems for military purposes and buying about 60% of DJI's Mavic aircraft supply worldwide. But clearly, that is not an option for the U.S. when China itself is their adversary. Automatic weapons. Of course, the main advantage of unmanned aircraft is to minimize risks for the military. A senior Pentagon official said, "It allows fewer people to fight by replicating what soldiers, sailors, pilots, and Marines have done very well." The shift towards autonomous systems comes at a time when the U.S. military is reducing personnel. Last February, the U.S. military announced it would reduce the force size to 24,000 people, about 5%. This move is part of a deliberate restructuring plan as the military transitions from a focus on counter-terrorism after 9/11 to reducing special operations forces and increasing personnel for unmanned aircraft, air defense, and cybersecurity. This move also occurs as the military continues to miss recruiting targets. A potential conflict between the U.S. and China could result in unprecedented casualties. In the future, to some extent, robots may be able to replace manpower in such wars. We can only hope that the day war breaks out will never come.